Many teams that play Rhine Rush comps often struggle against spam and dive comps all the time. In the mirror, Rhine is straightforward, and many teams focus on improving their rush against another rush comp. But against those spammier comps and dive comps, teams often struggle to find a solution and ultimately switch off rush. But is there another way to deal with those types of comps? Despite the name, Rush doesn't actually have to run at targets to win fights. You can use the objective as a way to force the enemy to fight with you at close range. They can ignore the objective for a short while, but eventually they will have to contest the objective, which brings them closer to you. On the other hand, it's not GOATS anymore. With nerfs to sustain, shields, and defensive abilities, you can't just simply walk on the objective, because you will get spammed out from all directions. Dive comps can also use high grounds around the objective as well as the open design of many points in the game to easily get access to your backline. So what's the secret to making the objective work? Turtling. Rhine comps can't fight in open space against spam comps, and fighting below high ground against dive puts Rhine Rush at a huge disadvantage. Turtling basically means that instead of trying to stand on or stall the objective in the open, you place your team in an enclosed area, preferably beneath, not directly under the high ground, where they are hard to kill. This is best illustrated by a few examples. Gibraltar is a bad map for Rhine comps because of the long sight lines and high grounds that both spam and dive teams can use. On defense, you can initially hold the high ground, but you will eventually have to drop the contest. But because you have no vertical mobility, it's hard to get back up to high ground once they have it. And by giving up the high ground, the enemy has free sightlines onto your supports and a great staging area to dive into the backline. If you insist on running Rhine on Gibraltar against a spam or dive team, you're basically forced to turtle. For example, on Gibraltar A defense, an underrated place to stall the cart is probably the mega beneath the high ground. They can hold high ground all they want, but if they want to push the cart, they have to fight you in the small underpass instead of the long sight lines of the high ground. The same principle applies on attack. Here, Chengdu are running Rhine Rush against Shanghai's Ball Tracer Sombra comp, and they're forcing the objective. And notice that Shanghai are surrounding Chengdu right now, but if they want to fight, they have to either focus Rhine, which is bad, of course, or they have to focus the backline, who is securely tucked underneath the gas station. And this is bad because the Rush team is very good at fighting in closed spaces, which the Ball Tracer Sombra team is very vulnerable to. Pathing is also incredibly important as well. For example, let's say you're trying to stall the cart on Route 66B defense. Many takes make the rookie mistake of just running it down main. Not only is there a lot of high ground to deal with, you also have very long sight lines that you have no answer for. Instead, make sure you rotate so that you're exposed to long sight lines and high ground as sparingly as possible. Right here, only the short segment in red is risky before you get to enter the building and avoid most of the enemy's poke. And finally, you might be thinking, if I'm just turtling, won't I get no kills? Well, how do you win in this game? Do you want to get the most kills in the lobby, or do you want to control the objective better than the enemy? One's deathmatch and one wins the actual game. You might decide to want to play more aggressive Rush, and many teams are experimenting with using Sim to enable it, but teams are getting better at countering this style. As the recent Overwatch League tournament showed, even top Rush teams like Dallas and Atlanta have trouble finding kills against spam and dive teams playing a more aggressive style. Which means that teams like them would have to rely more and more on the thing that keeps Rush even relevant, the objective. I expect more teams in the future, professional and non-professional, to learn how to fully use it to their advantage to beat those spam and dive comps more easily. The question for now, though, is will your team be the next?